Hi, everybody. Before we get to another great interview, the Two Opinionated podcast could really use your help. And it's easy, it's free. IMDb, which is the entertainment database, imdb.com, named us a top 100 podcast. We came in at number 82. That's a big deal because there's 15 million podcasts and growing. So to be named to anybody's top 100 list, pretty big deal for us. And the way you can help is to go to imdb.com, look up the Two Opinionated podcast, and that's it. Just bringing our page up. That traffic really helps us out. Our YouTube channel is MeisterCon Pod. All we ask is that you subscribe. It's also free, but that really helps us to attract these amazing guests that we keep bringing on the program. And that's it. Two easy ways for you to support us, and we would really appreciate the help. Now let's get to that interview. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Two Opinionated. I'm so excited today. I've got writer, director Carl Bessai and actor Vincent Gale with me. So welcome to you both.
Nice.
Thank you. So nice to be here.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited to talk with both of you, Carl. I've enjoyed a few of your offerings. You know, I've seen Embrace of the Vampire, and I really like the Lears.
Nice. Yes, we showed the Lears in Virginia. I remember we had a screening there. I'm not sure how close that is to you.
Well, it depends on what part of Virginia you're in, but yeah, it's not that far
but it
away.
It was a really great experience. You know, I mean, there's these just amazing pockets of interested indie film folk everywhere. You know, so that's one of the nice things about film festival circuits. You know, you go to these great places.
I love the film festival circuit. You get introduced to so much great entertainment, but you really do meet some just terrific people.
Yeah, and it's like surprises, you know. Yeah. These are films generally that you wouldn't find otherwise, and it's just a really expansive film culture, you know. Yeah. It's cool.
Well, and that was such a good cast on the Lears.
Yeah, it was nice. Working with Bruce Dern was particularly cool. You know, he's pretty old. He's got a lot of stories, and he's an actor who doesn't really like to stay on the script. He likes to improvise. Super fun. I mean, it makes it really fun and unpredictable.
You know? Does it take longer to film when you have somebody that's kind of goes off on their own?
He's you know, because of his age, I think, you know, he's not going to put in long hours. He's just not up for like a 12-hour day. So you have this little tidy window of time with him, and in that window, he just wants to be shooting. And in fact, just to kind of dovetail into my current project with Vince, you know, we're sort of trying to continue in this journey of making films that are a little more handmade, a little less of an industrial, structured, stylistic way of working. It's a little more loose. It's a little more influenced by the documentary. And, you know, so when I meet actors who want to improvise or they want to explore, I mean, to me, that's money. It's just beauty. You know, it's the best way to work. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that because a lot of directors and writers, they're not like that. They prefer to, you know, I wrote it this way. This is how it's going to be done.
Yeah.
Well, Bruce he's funny on that because he, of course, has a great relationship with Tarantino, and he loves to talk about how Tarantino really insists on the words that he's written, except when it comes to Bruce.
Right.
So Bruce gets to do whatever he wants.
Yeah, there's an expression that they have for him, right? It's like he derns it or something.
He derns it.
It's called a Dernsy.
A Dernsy.
That's right.
A Dernsy. Yeah. Well, Vincent, I'm a big fan of yours. You tend to show up on, and I know a lot of these shows are filmed probably in Vancouver, but you show up on a lot of the science fiction shows that I love.
I do.
And you have for years.
That's cool. Yeah.
Oh, and I enjoyed you as Mycroft on Watson.
Oh, thanks so much. I haven't seen that, but I know that aired sort of recently, like within the last 6 months, right?
And that was a nice surprise.
Thanks for that. And they got picked up for a second season, so they tell me I'll be back, but I'm not holding my breath.
Back. That's a fun show.
That's great. You see all my work. I'm really flattered.
Well, and when I started running years ago, and when I first started running, I had to do something to distract myself. So I couldn't run outside. I just ran on a treadmill, and I'd watch shows.
Yeah, right.
One of the first shows that I watched on treadmill was Van Helsing.
Oh, wow.
Loved you on Van Helsing.
Thank you.
Van Helsing was a good treadmill show.
I bet.
So the new project is called Field Sketches. So let's talk about that a little bit. Tell me what that's about.
Well, I guess it started from a place that's kind of personal. You know, on one hand, it's a little bit of a story of a man in his middle years who's getting a little bit tired of how much commercialism is a part of his work. Sure. And I feel that way sometimes as a filmmaker, you know. So I wanted to tell that story, created a character with Vince where he plays an architect, because I felt that architecture was a really nice allegorical trade that's very similar to film, in the sense that architects require a certain amount of infrastructure scale and industrial size to get their work made. You don't, I'm going to go out and make a building today. You know, it's something that requires a lot of, you know, groups of people, lots and lots of infrastructure. And so, and in the movie, the character that Vince plays, Peter, is, you know, he wants to get back to being creative, being more creative, having something smaller and more intimate, and have relationships that mean more to him and his work, not just about the money, you know. And of course, what comes along with that sort of altruism is poverty. So you can think this way and feel this way, but you know, it's hard to get a big budget when you're dreaming in an artistic world, you know. So my character struggles a little bit, and he decides, forget it. I'm going to go and spend a year like Henry Thoreau. Henry Thoreau, famous writer from the 1800s. You know, he's known for Walden. He went to live near this pond lake called Walden in the woods, and he built a little cabin, and he lived there, and he just recorded his kind of time alone in the woods for 2 years. And so our character does a bit of that, and he goes a little crazy, and it's about, you know, what happens when you unplug. So yeah,
I love that. So you're exploring the I'm assuming the good things that happen from being unplugged, but there's also some, you know, maybe some pitfalls to that.
Yeah, you go a little stir crazy. You know, we had also in my family, my father grew up on a little farm in the middle of nowhere, a place called Saskatchewan. It's kind of a prairie province. It's not a lot of people live there. It's you know, flat grain was grown there. And my grandfather was a German immigrant. They came and they had to, you know, plant a crop and build a house and the whole bit, real homesteady kind of story. And so he grew up in this little house in the middle of nowhere, and they were all Germans, and, you know, no one spoke English. And, you know, it was difficult. And so my cousin to this day has kept the old farmhouse on the land. It's still there. You know, Amazing. They still, and all the spaces, the walls, the cracks in the paint, the broken glass, the stained ceilings from the oil lamp heat that heats it in the night. I mean, it's just preserved. It's like a museum. And I really felt like putting this in a movie was something I wanted to do before I leave this earth. And it was a great opportunity to have the story of this architect kind of dovetail with this narrative about being in isolation. And some of that family history comes out in the film. So. Yeah,
I love that. So Vincent, how did you get involved in the project?
Well, Carl and I have collaborated over the years on a number of projects.
Yeah.
Personal stuff that Carl has created, and also studio stuff that Carl has been making. And we've always had a really, really good time working together. I've always really admired what he does, and I'm just always kind of looking for an opportunity to continue that. And funnily enough, we had collaborated in the early stages of the Lear's script Carl and myself and a couple of other actors had been involved in that process. And then at a certain point, scheduling became untenable, and so we had to bow out, and Carl continued to run with that. And so that was always, it was always disappointing to me that we had never got to continue this work that we had started. And so, literally my phone just rang one day and Carl said, "Hey, do you want to meet for a cup of coffee? I wrote this script and I'd love you to take a look at it." And it was just this beautiful meditation on this man who had kind of lost his way and who was at a certain point in his life, a very similar kind of point to the point that I'm at in mine. And so it was really, I hate the expression, but it's just a no-brainer to work with friends, and it's a no-brainer to work with an artist like Carl. So yeah, it was just a beautiful, it was kismet.
Well, we also make this is something I've really tried to do a lot in my work, is the script writing that I do is sort of the beginning. It's the start. It puts the story into kind of a tangible framework.
Right.
And then you bring the actors in really early, and you start really trying to mine their experiences and talk to them about the narrative and figure out what they need, what they can bring, what their ideas are. So it becomes a very workshop, almost a collaborative or collective process in the writing. So the script that was originally something I sent to Vince is kind of a guidebook to what we then spent, 5-6 months developing with Vince and some of the other actors who were in the film. And so when you go out and you start shooting this stuff, everyone is there kind of invested in the narrative. And it's not like, oh, what were my lines? They've lived the movie a little bit. And it's a really lovely way to work. I think there's a lot of zeitgeist in the filmmaking community everywhere in the world right now for this kind of asking these questions, let's say. And recently in Cannes, they made an announcement about this group of Danish filmmakers who decided to re-challenge the ideas from the original Dogma movement in 1998. They've come up with a new sort of strategy for making artistic films in this kind of pared down way. And I'm reading about this, and I'm reading about these filmmakers, and I'm thinking it's so interesting how people everywhere who become a little bit disenfranchised by the giant industrial machinery of filmmaking agree on this artistic process a little bit. So yeah, it's really a beautiful way to work, to bring some of the ideas of the stage, of theater, of the documentary, where the what you're making isn't entirely clear. You're discovering it as you go. I mean, here's an example. In Field Sketches, it was originally written as a fairly conventional narrative drama with actors and playing different roles. And when we early days were doing these workshops, we did a reading at one point. And in the reading, we only had a handful of actors there, so there were 4 of us. And so it was necessary for different actors to read multiple parts, as you would imagine, right? And so one of the actors read the Henry Thoreau role, and also there's a role in the film of the cousin. It's modeled on my own cousin who still lives out on the farm. This cousin kind of hosts Vince's character when he comes out to the land, right? So there's 2 completely different characters. George, the cousin, is modern, is kind of a rural hoser, a guy like, rough around the edges, right. Farm stock, right? And then Henry Thoreau is old-fashioned, is articulate, is a kind of gentleman, very different characters. And our actor friend, Ben Cotton, who plays both these characters in the movie, read both these parts. And he was so fantastic, the way he shifted his tone and his approach in the reading. It just seemed like a really great idea to start.
Why can't he play both? Why can't there be this element of magic realism where one character is played by the same person that plays the other character, and it just sort of intertwines and weaves itself into the fabric of the way we're telling this particular story.
Yeah, well, I think don't you think audiences they're smart enough to make that distinction? I think. I talk to my wife about this all the time. We both really hate when movies or TV shows are dumbing it down for the audience.
Yeah.
I don't need every single thing explained to me.
No.
I can figure that out. So I think audiences are smart enough to know that that's two different people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Same actor.
Well, and I think part of it, it's very difficult to do this as a writer, and you struggle with it all the time. But what you want is you want your audience to be discovering. You don't want them seeing everything before it's coming. You need them to be a part of the process of discovery, and have it feel original and worth the journey. It's so hard to do, And I found that by working with the actors well in advance of shooting the movie, you develop this kind of checks and balances around some of those kind of dumbing down ideas, like some of the things that were maybe too obvious, and I'm like overwriting. You see them go away as you have these conversations, So it's like having all these actors who are kind of the wind at your back, helping you make a better movie because you trust in their storytelling.
Do you tend to use the same actors for different projects? I know some directors and writers do.
I mean, I do what I can, of course. If like Vince and I I'm working on the edit of a new film right now, and it was something we shot this past just few months, and I was like immediately getting Vince in that role as well, because you have a shorthand. You've spent time on the road, you've walked through these valleys together, and you have like just an easy conversation, and he knows what I want and I know what he gives, and the dialogue's open, and it's courageous, and it's direct, and it's not, no one's worried about everyone's feelings all the time. Like we're friends, right. Who doesn't want to work with their friends?
Yeah, for sure. Well, and Vincent, you've worked with a few people like that. I know you did the Midnight Mass and Fall the House Usher and some of that, and he does a lot of that where he uses the same actors over.
Yeah, Mike Flanagan uses the same actors over and over again. He's very, very loyal to people for exactly the same reason as Carl does. Good directors, they know how important it is to have this shorthand with actors. If every time you walk into a scene, you're having to discover an actor for the first time and trying to figure out a shorthand and a way to work and communicate, it's very difficult. And so, Mike is constantly recycling actors. It's a gift for a director, but it's also a gift for an actor, because what you spend a lot of your time doing is trying to prove yourself.
Right.
And so that's what you're doing in front of the camera a lot, is you're trying to prove, you're not only playing the character, but you're trying to prove to the people that you're working with that let's do this again, and I can be counted on, and I'm good at what I do. And so when that is removed, you kind of drop into another level of work.
Well, you relax just a little bit.
Exactly, and it's just richer, it's more potent, and so repeat business is good in my mind.
Yeah, I think so too. I think so. Carl, did you give your cousin a cameo?
Well, he didn't want to be in the movie, but he did all these things behind the scenes. Like, for example, when he first got there, I had named the character something else, And then when he met the actor who was going to play him, essentially, and the Ben Cotton, who plays George, Ben's, he's kind of a handsome, rugged sort of character. And my cousin George, I wouldn't call him handsome, rugged.
I would.
He's a good guy. I love him, but he's not movie star good looks, But he just thought the idea that someone was going to play him in a movie was perfect, and I better give him the name George, So he insisted on being the name, and he was always behind the scenes, making sure we had enough wood, because we lived out there when we shot the film. And it was winter, and it was cold, and it was primitive. There's no running water out there. There's electricity, but it's just all pretty held together by tape, So we needed someone with some outdoor skills, So he was just like showing up with the truckload of wood. He was showing up with the bacon and eggs,
Yeah, he would cook you sausages. So when you finished work, there was a big feast of sausage.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was
every set. It really was.
It was a real family kind of experience.
Every set needs a George.
Yeah, that's awesome. My
You had like
my wife's family owns a cabin that's on a river locally, and her grandfather built that cabin on the river. You can't get to it except by crossing the river, so you have to get to it. But he does, the electricity was just hooked up to a car battery, but he had a refrigerator running off of it, a stove, light. It was just connected to a car battery.
Amazing.
I don't know if I'd trust that now, but we go over and use the camp. We do not try to hook up that car battery.
But it's hard to believe that there were these stories only 2 generations from mine. Like that a couple of generations ago, people were living in this very, very simple way. And I mean, this house is it's the place where my father was a child. It's where he grew up. The family had a tiny little room, an alcove almost, with a bookshelf, and it's full of these German books, and they're still there, And then in that room is also it's sort of a storage room, so there's lots of old junk, And I found an old chest, an old suitcase, kind of like a suitcase, but a little bigger, like one of those sort of trunks, I opened this trunk up, and there's all this correspondence from the 1950s. And see, the backstory is my father died when I was quite young, so I don't really know that much about him.
Right.
So I'm looking through this trunk, and I'm finding these old letters, and it turns out that he went in 1960 to East Germany to get his grandmother out of the Eastern Bloc.
Oh, wow.
She was trapped there after the war. She was living in communist Germany. She was an old widow, just living this very primitive, miserable life. And he flew, got a visa to cross into East Germany, and then smuggled her out on a day pass. He got her a day pass to cross the border because they didn't worry as much about the old people, and she was just going for a day, pretended to go see her sister. And as soon as he got her on the western side, they got to the airport, got her on a plane, and got her out of there and brought her back to Canada with the rest of the family. I'm reading this stuff, and I'm feeling like, this is great. This is great. So my character, Peter, Vince plays Peter, is discovering this stuff about his own family in the movie. So Vince and I took a plane with our loyal crew member, my nephew, Santiago. The 3 of us flew to Berlin. I have some actors that I've been working with regularly in Berlin. We got them all kitted out in period costumes. Yep. We rented an old Trabant, those East German shitty cars from 1960. Yep. And we went to a very kind of vintage, old kind of stretch of, it's actually a museum. It's a museum park near Berlin. And we shot this incredible scene where he's in his, he's reading these letters, and there's this beautiful flashback, and it goes to the story of picking up Oma in East Germany and getting her across the border. It was awesome. And all that because it's sitting in these letters, You can't write that stuff. It just writes itself,
Well, and I assume that going through that was probably kind of cathartic, and you're learning stuff of family that you didn't know. That's pretty amazing.
For sure. And it's universal, we all have these stories. We all have stories of generations gone by that really had different lives from us. And we got to honor those stories.
And it really is particularly that history, that part of the story is connective tissue that really brings an audience in. Because it's one thing to tell a story about a character, but as soon as you start talking about their history and who their parents were and who their grandparents were, I find that there's an audience connection. It's different.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because
it's not a generalization.
No, because everyone looks back to move forward, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And everybody needs to know where they came from to know who they want to be. And so I find more people talk to me about that part of the story than anything else. They're just amazed that they've known Carl for a long time, but they didn't know this part about him. And so there's something very unique, very special about about the familial history that's embedded in the film.
And then in the past, like if you could speak to your grandmother or your great grandmother and find out what she thinks about things going on in your life, in my mind, she would tell you some things that maybe would surprise you. And in this case, I mean, Vince's character is, he's frustrated with society. He's frustrated with commercialism. He's frustrated with his craft. A lot of things are bugging him, and he's a little bit jaded, and he goes through this catharsis because the old grandmother is kind of reminding him, look at all the sacrifices people made so your generation could do interesting things like architecture. What are you really complaining about, man? Get back to work.
Yeah, it kind of puts it in perspective.
Yeah,
exactly.
For sure. And I sometimes, as we all do, you feel sorry for yourself, or you think, I've got it rough, or this is difficult, or whatever. This isn't difficult.
That was
difficult.
Yeah.
So what do we see? What do we see Peter kind of going through? As his isolation kind of extends. What are we seeing? Is it is he is he becoming more emotional? Is he getting depressed? What kind of transformation do we see through the movie?
I mean, I think he's coming to terms with his place in a history of stories. He's becoming less caught up in himself. He's becoming less centered around himself. He's becoming more. He's realizing that there are other things going on in the world besides himself, and that even though he's isolated himself, he's actually learned to embrace the humanity he kind of leaves.
Yeah.
And it's partly through dialogues with Henry Thoreau. It's partly through dialogues with family members, but this is a really lovely message. Like we sometimes get very focused on our problems. I mean, whatever your problems are, you get really tunneled in on them, and you lose perspective. And so, I mean, this is a story of getting some perspective and realizing that, you just have to like ride through the waves, and the calm water will come at some point.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, and you can't push the river either. It's the other kind of metaphor, and he just sits in it, and that's what the trip to the farm does. It allows him to actually sit in stuff in a way that he hasn't before, because he's been in the city and he's been distracted.
Does your character, do we get to see him like re-enter society at some point? Well,
the film kind of winds up with him heading back.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It's sort of a catharsis of history and the emotion of confronting his demons through all these conversations and encounters, and then it's not even a spoiler alert. He heads back, and he's rekindled a bond with his daughter and this kind of thing. So
I love that.
Yeah.
I kind of like to me, I'd be curious to actually meet somebody that I had known before they went off by themselves, and then see how they're different when they get back. I think that would be really interesting, because it has to have an effect on you.
100%.
Yeah.
And we all think about it. We all think about a lot of things, but the nice thing about making art is that you can try almost speculative things that you might want to do, but never really have the time or energy or the real commitment to do. You try it out in your characters. You try it out in your art. It's a great way to explore possibilities.
Yeah. So are you taking, is Field Sketches, are you taking it the kind of the festival route to start and then releasing it, or is it just, is it straight out there where we can watch it?
Well, we're doing sort of a dog and pony kind of city to city theater tour. I mean, we started here in our hometown. I called up a couple theaters. We made some bookings, get our audience out. We share the box office with the venue, and then we go to the next town. And the money we make at the first venue
pays for the fuels, the trip to the second one.
I love that.
We played a couple of nights here in Vancouver at the Festival Cinema, which is a beautiful space downtown Vancouver. And then we're taking what we made there, and we bought ourselves tickets to Toronto, and Carl booked the theater in Toronto, and so we're going to go there for 2 days, and we'll stay with Carl's brother, who's an architect, who is an inspiration for the character. And
I love that there's so much family around.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and then Carl will take the film to Alberta, and we'll show it there, and then to Saskatchewan and show it there. And so, yeah, it really is a dog and pony show.
Is there a plan to bring it to the States at some point?
Always. Yes. In fact, I have a distributor who's from LA and Vegas. Their offices are LA and Vegas. And I would like to do that. I mean, the thing I feel with the festival circuit, it's become so big and so grand. You know, there are festivals that really, really matter to the profile of a film, but a lot of the times, you know, you put a lot of money and energy into screenings at festivals, and it doesn't actually put gas in the tank, you know?
Right.
So by working directly with exhibitors, you know, we're able to kind of, you know, just shortcut the process. Instead of, like, my distributor's only working on the streaming side, we're keeping the theatrical side ourselves, because I actually think there is a nice little niche audience of viewers who like to go for 1 or 2 nights, simple event-based theater showings of interesting movies and have a conversation, you know?
Well, yeah. Are you doing some of the, you know, the screenings and then have that conversation at the end?
For sure.
Yeah, I love
all of them. Yeah.
We try to get in each place we show it. Like, for example, if you were like, guys, you got to bring this film to Charleston, then what we would do is you would be our host. Like, we would get you to be like our kind of moderator. We'd come to we'd book it in the theater, we'd show up, and then you'd be like on stage with us after, like, having this conversation about the movie and with the audience. And it's like a film festival, but it's done just on an exhibition basis.
I got to do that with William Shatner. He came to town and needed a moderator for his show.
Wow.
And it was pretty great. You know, they watched Wrath of Khan.
Yeah.
And then, you know, he came out, I asked him questions, and he, you know, I only had to ask her 3 or 4 questions because he talked a half hour on each question. So my job.
Yeah, of course.
He's great.
He does. He's amazing. When was this?
This was February of 23. So
amazing. Yeah, I did a film with him years ago, maybe 20 years ago, and he was a real character. But Wrath of Khan is one of my favorites.
Oh, mine too. It was the part that I love the most is the audience is watching Wrath of Khan, and me and Bill Shatner are backstage just having dinner, just the 2 of us.
Yeah.
So in that time, he's just a guy. You know, he's asking about my family. He's telling me about his dogs. Just a guy. Soon as he walks on stage, is William Shatner. Totally different persona. But pretty incredible. Great. Yeah. It was a blast. And the best part was the show didn't end till after midnight, and he drove himself to Fort Wayne, Indiana, which is like a 4.5 hour drive overnight. He just went straight from the show to there.
Wow. And he must be, I think he's 90, right?
Oh yeah, he's in his 90s.
He's in his 90s, yeah.
Just amazing.
Is he that old?
Oh yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I know. It's tough to beat him at anything because he's been to space. I mean,
yeah, no, he's an incredible guy.
Yeah, that's pretty good. But I love that type of feel. So I think that's a great way to do it, and it connects you with your audience.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's really good. So for an audience coming to see the film, what are you hoping that they get out of it?
Well, I think I want to. I love this conversation we're having about the way we're making films, the sort of pared down, kind of authentic, minimalist approach that's sort of actor driven. It's less about special effects and big budgets, and it's more about actors and about the kind of story creation process. I like that conversation, and I think I'm interested in making films, and I think this is one of those films where it doesn't feel like you're watching kind of a big pretend show full of movie stars doing glamorous things. I mean, it's a very relatable realism, and I like that. I like that style, and I think that audiences kind of crave that. They're getting a little bit lost sometimes, I think, in the world of make believe. You know, some people love that stuff, but yeah, I like it. I like how we're connecting to people on that.
Yeah, I mean, I was really. I grew up in Britain. I lived in Scotland until the early '80s, and what excited me about filmmaking and acting and storytelling was the kitchen sink dramas of the '60s.
Yeah.
And the stuff that Richard Harris and Albert Finney and people like that did. And working with Carl is a similar situation to that. It's just, as he said, it's just, there's no superheroes, there's no extraordinarily glamorous or beautiful people. It's just a real reflection of the world we live in.
Yeah.
One of the things that the positive things I think came out of COVID, and there wasn't very many, but one of them I think is that we're kind of moving back toward where the dialogue and the script is more important than the special effects, and I think most of us we're on board with that. That's
right.
I grew up. We watched all these great movies, and they were just well written, dialogue, character, development.
Yeah.
And we kind of got away from that, and now it seems like we're swinging back toward that.
Well, yeah, like to me, the golden age of American cinema is the 1970s, early 1970s. Is just, I mean, it's still these films to this day. These films are incredible.
Yeah,
Clute, 5 Easy Pieces.
Network.
These films are just
Dog Day Afternoon,
so
Serpico. I mean, you can just go on and on and on.
Different genres, different styles, but just all actor driven.
Yeah.
And Donald Sutherland back in the day. I mean, the guy was incredible. The guy today, Donald Sutherland today, wouldn't be a movie star. You know what I mean? They just pick differently today. There's sort of I look at modern kind of casting of major budget filmmaking, and everyone's gorgeous. Everyone's just perfect and beautiful, and that's okay. It's escapist, I guess. But I don't know. That's why I like Mike Leigh. I like Ken Loach. I like those Safdie brothers. I like the way they show the warts and all kind of parts of the world.
Well, it's more relatable because it's more like the rest of us look.
Yeah.
Although some people don't want that. Some people want pure escapism, and that's its own thing too. And I understand that.
Well, everybody loves a big budget movie. I do too. They're fun, but I don't want that every single movie.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Those definitely have their place. But I grew up 70s and 80s, and to me, the movies back then, it's like every time I went, it was just an experience. Just absolutely loved it, and somewhere along the way, it changed a little bit. Wasn't necessarily bad. It was just different than what I grew up on. Yeah.
But when you watch $300 million being spent on a film, I don't know how many film sets you've been on, but I've been on some film sets where a lot of money is being spent, and you watch what goes on those film sets, and it's not relatable. It's mind blowing. I mean, there's a kind of, it's like a world unto itself. And a very few people have actually read the script. Very few people actually care about the artistry of the film. It's a kind of cash cow, and everyone's just on this cash train, and it's a bit sad. It's a bit sad.
Well, it turns out not always, but it comes across. I think.
Yes,
it's because sometimes you get that kind of not really phoned in, but a little phoned in. If that makes sense.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, when you see the credit crawl on a film that's 2 hours and 30 minutes, and the credit crawl is 8 minutes long, just so that they can show all the names. I mean, it's absolutely absurd.
I've had to stop using scrolling text in my credits because there's too few people and it looks too small. So I just have because it looks more respectful.
Well, you gotta just plug in bloopers or something.
Yeah.
Spread it out a little bit.
always remember seeing a short. I mean, this was a while ago, but it was this short had like big budget soundtrack, like big, Hollywood movie soundtrack, and then the credits roll, and that was the whole short. It was just the soundtrack and the credits rolling. It was so funny. I just thought, oh, that's great.
Well, they've gotten kind of clever. Different ways they do the credits to try to get people to stick around for them.
For sure.
Yeah, it's difficult when you've set for 2 to 3 hours to then wait for the end of the credits. Most of us can't do that.
No.
That's an evening already. It's time to go.
It's true. It's true.
Well, so Carl, what's next for you after Field Sketches? Do you have anything else that you're kind of working on? We can keep.
Well, we started shooting, and I'm just editing now. I call it a film essay. It's a film called. This is the title. Ready?
Yeah.
It's called 4 or 5 Things I Want You to Know About Me.
Okay.
So it's a film essay. So it features a whole bunch of different characters, and each of the characters is telling you things they want you to know about them. Like one is very interested in her. She's an actor, young and trying to make it as an actor, and she's struggling. There's an older actress who's struggling because she's not getting the work anymore. So themes around ageism are kind of in there. There's a little bit of a satire, so it's a bit funny, and it's a bit kind of a little experimental. It's a little quirky. Vince plays a director who makes only commercials because a long time ago, as an independent filmmaker, as a person who was very distinguished by his art house credentials, he found himself just getting really jaded by the increasing commercialism of cinema and decided, if I'm going to sell something, I just want to be paid to sell stuff. I don't want to pretend that I'm making art when I'm really selling stuff. So he has this sort of thesis about being a commercial director. But of course, deep down inside, he's disappointed to have sold out so deeply to the commercial business. So it's full of these kind of quirky juxtapositions of characters shedding light on these different ideas about the world. It's funny and cool, and I'm trying to get it ready for next year's.
Circuit. I like the way you write because it's a little different. You explore some themes that you don't see that often, I think, in the cinema, and that's
well, one of the big topics in the film essay is AI, because it's something everyone wants to talk about all the time. So I've kind of had to sit here and think about it. And my thesis now is that AI is here to stay and here to grow. It's not going to go away. Right. You better figure out what your relationship is to AI. And I think one of the great discoveries I've made is that the human capacity for error, bad judgment, flaws, all of the things that are kind of the quirks and idiosyncrasies of being human are ultimately going to be, those are the things that we're going to hang on to. Those are the things that make us interesting. Right. That perfection and deep knowledge and having like being able to kind of completely control something in the end is not that interesting. Why do we watch sports? We watch sports because we want to see people struggle and maybe fail or maybe win. But it's that question. We don't have the answer. We like that. Human beings are flawed. So I think it's a cool thesis.
Yeah. And I like that. That's really really interesting. And we all love to see somebody, striving. To do something, even if it fails. Yeah. Just the effort sometimes is worth
watching 10 robots in a 100-meter race running 8 seconds flat all across the lanes. I don't think I'd pay to see that.
That's right. Not a lot of drama there.
No. What's going to happen? Are they nervous?
Well, Carl, Vincent, thank you so much for taking a little bit of time. But the film is Field Sketches. It sounds amazing. And you're in the process now of taking it around, or is that coming up?
Right. Yeah. We're in the middle of it. It's our summer tour, the grand tour.
I've always wanted a summer tour. I haven't found a reason to do it yet, though. Maybe I can travel around and interview
so inclined.
Yeah, you can come and join us on the tour.
Or invite us down there. And we'll come down.
Hey, you guys are welcome to come here. You know, we've got where we have our studio, a couple doors down is the Alban Theater, you know, right there. It's the perfect location for that. We love to have people come through. You know, if you like the little small town feel.
Oh yeah.
Oh yes, yeah. That's what we live.
We
for.
did. We've had a few film reviews there, and Ed Asner came through, did his one-man show. It's just a little theater that was built probably in the 60s. You know, I used to come to it when I was little to watch movies. Now it's more like a you know, the local theater, but they still show, you know, films and stuff. Right. Yeah, cool. I'll pass on the stuff. Maybe we can work it out and get you guys
pass it on.
Yeah,
pass it on.
Great. So nice to meet you.
Yeah, really, really great to meet you.
Oh, I've really enjoyed this. Thank you both so much. So before we wrap up, a couple little things. Vincent, are you working on anything else that we can kind of keep an eye out for?
Well, working with Carl, and then I do a show here. It's a Canadian procedural called Allegiance, but I don't think they're trying to get a distribution in the United States, but it's a CBC show called Allegiance. And it's a police procedural, and so we're
finally starting to get some Canadian shows.
You'll get it because it's NBC Universal.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh yeah, it'll come over. Yeah, we're starting to, which is great. That's one good thing with streamers and stuff. We're getting a lot more content from outside the U.S. and there's so much good out there.
Yeah, right. And I'm just waiting to hear about season 2 of Watson. So I'm just waiting for the phone to ring.
There's something wrong. I mean, come on.
Thank you.
Carl, go through your website for the film and your social media, all of that stuff.
So my Instagram's at Carl Bessai, all spelled out, just my name, CarlBessai. My website, I'm kind of retooling it, but right now it's ravenwestfilms.com, all just spelled out. That's kind of most of my stuff. Yeah, I don't do much more than Instagram. Instagram's kind of my thing.
Well, Instagram's the nicest one.
Yeah.
You know, we've all got, you know, like the X logins, but it's really just to go and to see what's going on. You know, something happens, we go to X and we kind of check out, see what's going on. But
yeah, I had to step away from that for personal reasons.
Instagram's just, you know, you're putting up what you're doing or what you're eating. It's just nice.
Yeah.
Vincent, where can we find you?
Well, I have a pretty light footprint out there. You can, if someone wanted to find me, I do reside still on X, and it's nice. At Vincent Quigley, Quigley. And I'm around there. But
what's the Quigley from? Is that?
Well, Quigley, it was my birth name, and then Gale is sort of a stage namey new family name that I use. But yeah, like I have a pretty low footprint, as I said. I don't participate in much social media.
If someone wants to hire you.
Yeah, if someone wanted to hire me, I suppose they could find me through my agent at characters.com. But,
yeah. Well, somebody might want to work with you.
You never know.
I mean, I highly recommend it.
Yeah. Me too. Big fan.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. This is been terrific. So my son, he'll edit for us, and then we'll post at some point next week, and I'll send over all the links to Leslie.
Awesome.
Which, by the way, just to put in a good word for Leslie's awesome. I love.
Oh, that's so nice to hear. Yeah, she works really hard.
I know she does. Yeah, she is. I've worked with her for several years, and she's always just the best. Just easy.
Oh,
yeah.
Nice.
So put a little plug in there for her.
Amazing.
All right, guys, hold on one. Carl Bessai and Vincent Gale. Big fan of Vincent's. He's a terrific actor. I mean, just terrific. If you're a Snowpiercer fan, I became a fan from the movie, and then the show was just outstanding. And we've had several of that cast has been on the podcast. So if you're a Snowpiercer fan, definitely check that out. Vincent played Flesh on Van Helsing. We've had a lot of that cast on the podcast as well. So if you're a vampire fan or a Van Helsing fan, definitely check out our interviews there. He's been on, I mentioned, he's been on a lot of nerdy shows that I love. So Supergirl, Supernatural, like several times, Arrow, Rain. He's on Bates Motel. You know, we've had Nestor Carbonell, is a good friend of ours, has been on the program. So if you're a fan of Nestor's, he's awesome in Shogun. Definitely check that out. My son's favorite show is Psych. He has been on there. Loved him as Morrison on Stargate Universe. He was on a show called The Human Target, which I'm pretty sure was based on a comic book. He was on Fringe, which I'm such a fan of. Michael Cervasis, I'm saying his last name wrong, is from West Virginia. He's been on the podcast. He is terrific, fantastic. Absolutely love Fringe. He was Chief Peter on Battlestar Galactica, and there was kind of like a spinoff movie. It was supposed to, I think, become something. It didn't quite get there, but it was a spinoff called Battlestar Galactica Razor. He played the Chief Peter on that as well. He was on the 4400. I'm assuming that was from the original, not the remake. I was a big fan of the original, played Jack. He did Duncan in X-Men Evolution, which was a terrific cartoon. He was on Queer as Folk. There was a Canadian, I think it's a Canadian show. I may have that wrong, but called Da Vinci's Inquest, which if you've ever looked that up, it's had just about every actor in Canada, if I've got the right country, on the shows. Terrific. But he's done Monk. He did SG-1, Stargate, a show called Jeremiah that I enjoyed. He was on First Wave, Outer Limits, Highlander. He did FX the series, 21 Jump Street. I should have mentioned that one to him because that was pretty great. And the original MacGyver. So yeah, he's been all. So Help Me Todd. And I mentioned the work he did with Mike Flanagan, the Midnight Mass, and Fall of the House of Usher. And then recently, he's on Dead Boy Detectives, another comic book adaptation. He was on the show called Tokyo Vice, which I discovered on Max. Really good show. Yeah. Oh, and he worked with Uwe Boll, who has been, him and his wife have been on the program. He worked on Blood Rain 2, which I think had Christina Logain. I think I've got that name right. I've been chasing her for about 6 years. So hopefully we'll work that out at some point. And then Carl, I think one of the more talented writers and directors that we have out there today. He puts so much thought into his projects, and they're always quirky. They're always very relatable, just from a human aspect. His characters just feel like somebody that you might run into and have a conversation with. I've always enjoyed stuff. I love the Lears. He talked about Bruce Dern quite a bit, but it also had Sean Astin and Anthony Michael Hall. Big fan of both of theirs. Terrific movie. I didn't mention it, but he also did one called No Clue with Amy Smart that I really enjoyed. And then I did mention Embrace of the Vampire. I grew up loving the kind of Victorian horror, and vampires fit right into that. So if it's a vampire movie, chances are I'm going to see it at some point. So the movie currently that they're working on is called Field Sketches. Please keep an eye out for that. I think you will definitely be glad that you did. Hope you enjoyed that. That was kind of a long-winded, but I wanted to make sure to do Carl and Vincent justice. So hopefully I did. If you're finding us for the first time, thank you for being here. Definitely don't take that for granted. There's 15 million podcasts out there. Really happy that you chose us. If you'd like to support us, it's easy to do. It's free. Our YouTube channel is MeisterCon Pod. Please subscribe. Doesn't cost you anything, but really helps us out. Our website is meistercon.com. You can find, if you can believe it, we're going to hit episode 1000 probably late June, and you can find all of those episodes, audio and video versions, on the website meistercon.com. Thank you guys so much. This has been a blast. Till next time. Bye, everybody.